Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're doing a deep dive into an ancient but just an astonishingly precise technology of the mind.
Yeah.
We're looking at the roadmap laid out in early Buddhist discourses for achieving this profound mental concentration that they call samadhi,
hmm
and then integrating that with, the ultimate goal,
hmm
realizing not self or anatta.
That's really the mission, isn't it? We're not just reading philosophy today. We're treating these sources, these ancient collections, almost like a spiritual engineering
I
manual
like that, an engineering manual.
because they detail the exact step-by-step training to take a mind from, well, from scattered distraction all the way to a liberated, unified awareness.
Yeah.
It's systematic. But here's the central paradox we have to keep in mind from the start.
Okay.
The ultimate freedom requires not just achieving these incredibly deep levels of bliss, but then learning to abandon them.
Right, to see them as temporary conditions.
Exactly.
That immediately grabs you. You work to achieve the highest possible internal pleasure, and then the next instruction is let go of it.
Mm.
But before we can even get to those states, these absorptions, the
Yeah.
jhanas, the sources, are crystal clear. You can't just jump in. This whole journey has some really strict prerequisites. It starts with how you live your day-to-day life.
Precisely. The whole framework is the Noble Eightfold Path, and it's sequential. You have to set up the external conditions for success first. And the foundation for all of it is ethical conduct.
Conduct that's described as, what is it? Unbroken, intact.
Impeccable. And the sources emphasize this isn't about moralizing for its own sake. It's about, well, mental energy conservation.
Okay, how does ethical conduct conserve energy for meditation? That's a fascinating link.
It's all about creating the preconditions for tranquility.
Yeah.
The texts say that, fulfilling this condition of ethical conduct prevents you from having regrets. If you live without these moral blemishes, you're not spending mental energy chewing on past misconduct. That absence of regret then leads to joy. Joy evolves into rapture, then tranquility, then bliss, and only then can you even approach right immersion.
So if regret is there,
If regret is there, the mind is immediately unfit for dup work. It's just too agitated.
that completely reframes ethics. It's not a hurdle you have to jump. It's the fuel for the engine.
It really is.
And part of this foundation seems to be this rigorous sense restraint.
Yeah.
That's a key instruction, right?
Well, it's paramount. And it's maybe the most practical instruction in this whole first phase. The texts tell the mendicant to practice restraint over the six sense doors.
Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind.
Yep. And the danger isn't the sense object itself, it's what the mind does with it.
The sources mention that practitioners shouldn't get caught up in the features and details. What does that actually mean in practice?
Well, imagine you see something beautiful with your eye. If you linger on the features, the shape, the color, and then the details, the context, the meaning, how desirable it is, you're opening the door.
You're elaborating on the raw data.
You are. And by dwelling on those features and details, you let these unskillful qualities like covetousness or displeasure just invade the mind. But if you practice restraint, you just note the sensory input. That's it. No story. The reward for that is tangible. It's an unsullied bliss.
So we establish restraint to stop these negative qualities from even showing up.
Yeah.
But let's be real, even the most disciplined person is going to fail sometimes.
Of course.
And when sense restraint breaks down, that's when the famous obstacles, the 5 hindrances, rush in.
They do. And the texts are very explicit that these 5 sensual desire, ill will, dullness and drowsiness, restlessness and remorse and doubt, they're fueled by misconduct and a lack of sense restraint. They're like 5 active barricades.
Can you give us a quick, sort of modern example of how one of those acts as a barrier?
Sure. Take restlessness and remorse. Let's say you sit down to meditate after a day of, scattered, impulsive texting, maybe an argument you had. The moment you try to settle the mind, that unresolved tension, the remorse, it just boils up. The mind is immediately restless. It's jumping from thought to thought. You can't sit still. The energy that should be unifying the mind is instead just cycling through, I should have said this, or I need to fix that.
You can't enter absorption if the mind's being pulled in 5 different directions.
You just can't.
So once that ethical foundation is solid and the hindrances are temporarily pushed aside, the path shifts.
Yeah.
It moves from blocking bad qualities to actively cultivating positive ones.
Yes. Now we're getting to the 7 awakening factors.
Right.
These factors, mindfulness, investigation, energy, rapture, tranquility, immersion, and equanimity, these are the actual instruments of liberation.
Okay.
The key instruction here is how you develop them.
Which is?
They have to be developed relying on seclusion, fading away, and cessation. This is so critical because it forces the factors to ripen as letting go. You're cultivating these profound positive states, but you're doing it while relying on an environment of detachment.
And that connects directly to the core wisdom, doesn't it? The concentration is only half the picture. The other half is wisdom, that deep realization of anatta, dismantling the illusion of self.
That is the intellectual engine of the whole thing. The practitioner focuses their attention on what are called the 5 grasping aggregates.
Which are form, feeling, perception, choices, and consciousness.
Right. The very components we mistakenly identify as me or I.
And what's the key thing the practitioner has to realize about these 5 components?
The core insight is that they are always in flux. They're impermanent, and because they're always arising and passing away, they are, by their nature, suffering. They're perishable. The texts are so rational here. They basically say, if something is constantly changing and it's beyond your permanent control, it is not fit to be regarded thus. This is mine, I am this is myself.
It sounds so obvious when you say it like that, but our entire experience is built on the opposite assumption.
It's completely counterintuitive, isn't it? We cling to consciousness itself, thinking our awareness is the permanent self that has a body.
Right, or that the self is somehow in the consciousness.
Exactly. But the sources point out that even consciousness is dependent on conditions. It's always arising and decaying. And when that consciousness you were clinging to as self decays and perishes, the result is sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress.
So the suffering isn't from the changing reality. It's from the attachment to it.
That's it. That's the whole game.
But how do you make that realization practical? It's one thing to say my consciousness is impermanent, but it feels very, very real right now.
It requires what the texts call the rational application of mind to the 6 senses. You have to truly see their instability. So if you apply the mind rationally to the eye, for example, you see that any visual sensation is just momentary. It's a flash. When a practitioner truly sees this, not just thinks about it, but sees it, they grow disillusioned with the senses. The illusion breaks. And the texts say that when relishing ends, greed ends. When greed ends, relishing ends. And the mind is well freed.
That freedom comes from rational disidentification.
Exactly.
And this impermanence of the aggregates, it leads us right to the mechanism of how suffering sustains its self-dependent origination. This concept can feel pretty complex.
It can.
Let's distill the core idea.
At its heart, dependent origination just explains that the entire mass of suffering is a cycle. It's a chain reaction. It starts with ignorance, a basic failure to see reality as it is.
As impermanent and not self.
Right. That ignorance creates the condition for choices, or what the texts call instigating activities. Those activities then fuel consciousness, which leads to sensing, feeling, craving, and eventually grasping.
And grasping is the key action that locks us into the cycle.
Yes. Grasping is the cause of continued existence, which leads to rebirth, old age, and death. It's the engine of the whole thing. So if you follow that process backward, the cessation of suffering requires the utter cessation of that grasping.
You break the chain.
You break the chain. The wise person sees that the whole thing is dependent, and by stopping the cause, the ignorance, and grasping the effect, which is suffering, has to stop too.
Okay, so we have the foundation ethics and sense restraint, and we have the destination and the map, the wisdom of anatta and dependent origination. Now we get to the central practice, developing the deepest states of concentration, the 4 absorptions, the jhanas.
Yes.
Where do we physically and mentally begin?
The instructions are surprisingly simple, and they're all about stability. You find a secluded place, a quiet spot, root of a tree, an empty hut. You sit down, cross-legged, set the body straight, and establish mindfulness right there at the start.
And the anchor for this whole process is mindfulness of breathing. Why the breath?
The breath is reliable. It's always there. And it's seen as an aspect of the body. You just focus on breathing in and out mindfully, observing, maybe stilling the physical process. This stabilizes the mind to the point where it's ready to enter these 4 progressive states.
Let's walk through that progression, starting with the first absorption. What makes this state distinct?
You enter the first absorption when the mind is quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unskillful qualities.
So the groundwork pay off.
Exactly. The 5 hindrances are gone, so the mind is ready. Here, the mind is still being intentionally placed and kept connected. There's still some initial thought working to keep the focus stable. And this success is characterized by this intense rapture and bliss that's born specifically from seclusion.
The joy of having finally separated from the world's distractions.
That's it. It's an intellectual effort, but with this powerful emotional payoff.
So how does the second absorption then differentiate itself from that?
This is a huge conceptual shift. The intensity of the first absorption, that very act of placing and keeping the mind connected, that thinking effort, is now seen as too coarse,
Too much work.
too much work. The activity of thought is stilled. Now the mind is internally clear, it's unified. The rapture and bliss you feel are no longer born of seclusion, but are born solely of immersion itself.
So the difference is, in the first state, the mind is achieving focus, but in the second, the mind is focused.
Precisely. The mind becomes wholly unified. The texts have that beautiful analogy here.
Delayed.
The deep lake, it has no external inlet, no streams, no rain. It's fed entirely by spring water welling up from inside, that cool water just drenching and saturating the whole lake. That's the rapture and bliss of the second absorption. It's an internal joy, finer than any worldly pleasure.
If the second absorption is so blissful,
Mhm.
why on earth would you move to the third? This is where that paradox of abandoning bliss feels very real.
Because even that rapture, that sheer exuberance, it's a conditioned state. It's an emotional high, and it's still impermanent. To get to a deeper, more stable freedom, you have to let go of that high. In the third absorption, the rapture fades away. The state shifts to one of deep equanimity combined with sharp mindfulness and awareness. The bliss is still there, but it's subtler, deeper, more stable. It's a calm, non-reactive well-being.
That must take incredible discipline to sacrifice that overwhelming joy for a quieter tranquility, which brings us to the ultimate stillness, the fourth absorption.
Here, even the final remnants of pleasure and pain are given up, all of it. This is the state of pure equanimity and mindfulness, utterly without pleasure or pain. It's a perfect, imperturbable stillness where even the physical breath is entirely calmed.
The mind is perfected.
It's purified, bright, and ready to be directed toward that final liberation.
But again, and this is so important, the goal isn't just to be in this state. The wisdom of anatta has to be integrated even here, right?
It has to be. The texts capture this so well with the experience of Sariputta, one of the foremost disciples.
What did he say?
He describes entering the first absorption, but he stresses, "It didn't occur to me. I am entering the first absorption," or "I have entered the first absorption." This is the absolute pinnacle of non-attachment. Even the experience of this sublime mental state is just understood to be a conditioned phenomenon. It's not I, it's not mine. This radical non-identification is what prevents you from creating new kinds of clinging, like clinging to your spiritual achievements.
So once this deep absorption is perfected, purified, bright, what is the final liberated state that the practitioner actually achieves?
With the mind in that state purified and imperturbable, the practitioner can direct it. They direct it toward the knowledge of the ending of the defilements, sensuality, the desire to be reborn, and ignorance. And by knowing and seeing reality in this way, through that lens of perfected concentration and wisdom, the mind is finally freed from those defilements.
So the sources often use imagery, don't they, to capture this state of ultimate freedom.
They do, and it's highly dramatic. The mendicant, who has no underlying tendencies left, is said to shed the near shore and the far, as a serpent its old, worn-out skin.
A complete transformation.
They're unyoked from all limitations. A true hero. Unattached, awakened, they've ended the cycle of becoming.
And for you, the listener, how should we understand this final state of extinguishment, or nibbana? What is it, if it's beyond the senses, beyond even the highest bliss?
It is the ultimate letting go. It's described as the stilling of all activities, the letting go of all attachments, the ending of craving, extinguishment. The texts really try to describe it as a peace that remains even when the senses, what is seen, heard, thought, or known, just cease to be perceived. It's a sublime cessation because the mind is finally free of all limits. The whole apparatus of suffering has been dismantled.
It's an astonishingly coherent roadmap. It starts with something as practical as avoiding regret, and it culminates in the extinguishment of all conditioned activity.
It really is.
This deep dive into the source texts really emphasizes that this profound freedom isn't some distant mythological goal. It's something that is accessible right now in this life.
The practicality is key. The instruction isn't just philosophical, it's operational. And you should care because this path through sense restraint, wisdom, and absorption provides the only true escape from that cycle of suffering and grasping that dependent origination describes so well. The freedom is in truly understanding the gratification, the drawback, and the escape in every single thing you experience.
Which brings us right back to that initial paradox and to our provocative thought for you to explore this week. We learned that the practitioner must let go of the intense rapture and bliss of those deep meditative states, the second and third jhanas, because they're still just conditioned impermanent pleasures.
Right.
So if even profound internal bliss must be abandoned to reach ultimate freedom, it really challenges us to understand.
What level of deep, unconscious attachment might you be unknowingly holding on to right now? For the much coarser, momentary pleasures in your daily life, that comfortable routine, that fleeting high, that satisfying sensation. If the most sublime state of mind is still considered a form of suffering to be relinquished, where does that place the small, temporary joys we cling to every single hour? Understanding that full spectrum gratification, drawback, and escape, that's the work of liberation.